I hear Christians say that nobody can obey all of those laws. Well, there are 613 written commandments in Torah. Most people are familiar with the 10 Commandments, plus some commandments about homosexuality, which they seem to familiarize themselves with. But there are 613 commandments, and the idea that is in many people's minds is that everybody has to obey those 613 commandments. Actually, come to think of it, the way I said that, that's correct. Everybody does, but not one person. Let me explain. There are commandments that we are given in the land that we live in. I drive for a living, and so there are regulations that govern how I'm supposed to drive. There are speed limits to observe. I'm required to have a valid driver's license. I'm required to have insurance on my vehicle. I am required to make sure that my vehicle is safety inspected and roadworthy. And these are just but a few of the regulations that I need to observe. Do I have to observe those rules all the time? No, I don't. Right now, I'm sitting here in my cottage. I don't have to observe the rules of the road. Not because the rules of the road are unimportant or no longer are valid. They are. I hear cars going by down the road here, and I know that for each person that's on the road, the rules apply to them. They don't apply to me right now, but the minute I get in my car and drive out on the road, those rules apply to me. Well, the same thing is in Torah. In Torah, there are rules that apply to certain people and sometimes at certain periods, but not necessarily all the time. So the idea that one has to obey 613 commandments is a bit of a misnomer. And yes, I'm going to avoid talking about the oral law right now because I want you to get your head around the concept. Right now in Canada, which is where I live, if I were to call up a lawyer or call up a politician or a member of parliament, I said, if I asked them, how many laws are on the books right now? How many laws regulate every level of society in Canada? Think about it for a moment. There are probably, willing to bet, more than 613 laws regulating the building code, just on how a building is built. I am willing to bet there are more than 613 laws that somebody who's building a building has to be aware of the right and wrong ways of doing things. A little description of the National Building Code of Canada, 2005. It has over 800 technical changes alone that have been incorporated into the new edition. And you'll see that the different areas that it covers, fire protection, occupant safety and accessibility, structural design, environmental separation, heating, ventilation and air conditioning, plumbing services, and housing and small buildings. How many pages is this? 1,167 pages. You got over 800 technical changes alone. These are all regulations and requirements that people that are involved in the building industry have to be aware of and have to conform to when they are planning, designing, and building any kind of structure. It has to conform to this building code. The building code alone serves as a pretty good model for demonstrating that the idea of obligating one's self to a set of regulations is completely, well, not just reasonable, it's absolutely essential. It's absolutely required. Now, does the person who's building the building say, look, there's no way I can keep those 750 laws in the building code. Nobody can keep all of those laws. That's crazy. I think you'd think that would be a little silly, and I would too. And I also think it's a little silly when we make the comments that nobody can obey all those laws. That's a silly comment. The fact is that many of the laws that are in Torah are for the priesthood. A large number of them are for the priesthood. These laws are not required to be observed by the rest of Israel. They're not required to be observed by the women of Israel or the men of Israel. Just those who are the descendants of Aaron, the priesthood. There are laws that pertain to the Levites, and they don't apply to any other tribe in Israel. There are some laws that apply only to women. And at that, there are some laws that only apply to women at certain points in time. And there are some laws that pertain to festivals, the feasts, and the celebrations of the Lord. And those two, you don't have to observe laws regarding Yom Kippur, throughout the year. Just on Yom Kippur. So let's dispense with the silliness about how many laws there are and whether we can obey them all or not. Because we need to understand, we need to put these things into context. And as I said, we've got more than 613 laws governing any country in the world. In fact, it'd be into the thousands. And you know what? The government expects you to abide by them. And I've looked at the laws of the land, and I have to tell you something. Some of them I may not agree with. Some of them I might not like. But I certainly don't go around breaking the law saying, nobody can keep all those laws. That's just absurd. So get over yourselves and realize that just as the seed needs a context to grow, to keep the commandment, so too all of us. There's a context to all of our obedience. There's a context to every instruction in Torah. And, it's not like you're sitting there and there's 613 commandments staring you in the face that you have to do. That's just absurd. Now, I'm not a Jew, so I don't have to observe the 613 commandments of the Torah. But these kinds of conversations do come up. And so I thought I would address it from that perspective.